Walters is back as the official Bar of the Nats Chat podcast for our 6th season of coverage. Located just across the street from the ballpark, Walters is the best sports bar in Navy Yard.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Shortstop Nunez well toward the middle. House off the line at third. Now the pitch swung on, hit high in the air. Left side, Nunez going out. Coming in is Lyle, who's going to catch it. Look out, they collide and the ball drops. 2 runs are going to score on the play. And the Cubs lead 4-0 by Esteros from third, Amaya from first, and Bush, the hitter, ends up at second base. Well, Lyle looked like he was trying to call off Nunez. And I don't know if Nunez could hear him, but Nunez was going to make the catch. And then Lyle and Nunez collide. The ball hits off the glove of Lyle, with Nunez basically landing on top of him, pinning him to the ground.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at Wrigley Field, where the Nats, off their 10-4 opening day win at the Chicago Cubs on Thursday, fell to 1-1 with a 10-2 loss at the Cubs on Saturday afternoon. So for the Nats so far, a 6-run win and an 8-run loss, though the loss did include a home run by James Wood and an RBI single and an outstanding defensive play by Nasim Nunez. But before we go any further, we want to say thank you. Our last installment of the podcast, the show in which we discussed that opening day win, is our most downloaded show for an opening day game in the 6-season history of this podcast, which as of late Saturday morning was the number 30 baseball podcast in the country per Apple Podcasts. Yes, number 30 in the ultra competitive landscape that is baseball podcasts in this country. So again, thank you. We hope that those of you who had trouble watching the opening day win due to problems regarding Nationals.TV not being available on your cable/satellite provider were able to watch Saturday's game. Washington Nationals President of Business Operations, Jason Sinaraja, he wrote a letter to you, the Nats fan. The letter came out on Friday evening, included this, quote, "While we celebrated Blake Butera's first win as a major league manager, we understand that for some fans, the experience of watching the game on television was challenging." End quote. I got a kick out of that word, challenging. A nice diplomatic word choice. But in all seriousness, I will say kudos to the Nats for not shying away from the problems. This was a good letter from Sinaraja. And, you know, Mark, off the 10 runs on opening day, the Nats offense on Saturday found Cubs pitching to be, quote, challenging, end quote.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Maybe in the end, everyone would be better off not being able to watch it because the team did better with presumably fewer people able to tune in on Thursday than they did on Saturday. Look, there are a lot of kinks that have to be worked out, and that applies off the field and even on the field, perhaps. And I think you saw some of those come out. As good of a game as that was on Thursday, this was pretty much the exact opposite of it. There's not a whole lot to get excited about. A couple significant moments along the way that you should be, focusing on, but really a sloppy game, bad pitching, bad defense, very little hitting, and you saw basically a complete 180 in terms of the result from opening day.
Yeah, the Nats in this game, 2 runs, a mere 4 hits, which were a homer and 3 singles. The Nats did work 4 walks, went 1 for 2 with runners in scoring position, as, yes, the Nats had just 2 at-bats with runners in scoring position the entire game. The Cubs starting pitcher was Cade Horton, 2 runs in 6 and a third innings. Now, no CJ Abrams for the Nats for this game. He was not with the team due to a death in his family, so we certainly wish him and his family the best. And we had an interesting CJ Abrams item prior to the game. We'll get to that coming up in just a bit. But, this lineup, different in so many ways than the lineup for opening day, as we have discussed, right? The Nats, their new process, we are going to see a lot in the way of variations of the lineup. And, just because there is success one day doesn't mean we'll see the same lineup the next day. One of the staples of Davey Martinez, or so it seemed, was if the Nats had a good offensive game, the next game's lineup was like a carbon copy of the previous game's lineup. We did not have that in this game. I mean, it stood out. Joey Wiemer was an offensive hero on opening day, wasn't in the lineup for this game number 2 on Saturday afternoon. But the offensive results were not good, and the highlights were few. It was, though, good to see James Wood homer. He had a rough opening day, but Wood on Saturday as the Nats starting right fielder, not left fielder, but still the leadoff batter. 1 for 4 with a solo homer. Wood in a Nats 1-run fourth, leadoff opposite field home run to left field on an 0-2 pitch to cut the Nats deficit to 4-1. If you had to pick one Nat to homer, I think most people would have said James Wood, and that was, one of your prototypical James Wood homers, and it was nice to see that in this game.
I mean, it was 110 miles an hour, only 18-degree launch angle. It was a bullet on a line to the opposite field. Yeah, that's James Wood in a nutshell. And it came on an 0-2 pitch. Now, he got a fastball just right over the heart of the plate. So not the hardest pitch in the world to hit. But given how he had started this thing off, and admittedly, in his own words, he felt like both the process and the results on Thursday were not good. He thought he was swinging at the wrong pitches, taking the pitches that he should have been swinging at. He struck out in his first at-bat in this game. So to get one that he could do damage with and then actually do it, I think that's got to be at least a little boost of confidence for him. He didn't have a great spring. We talked about that, but there were glimpses along the way. And a moment like this reminds you that he's always this close to getting out of whatever funk he's in. Or even if he is in a funk, he always has that ability, if he gets the right pitch and he puts the right swing on it, to do major damage. And I think that's something we have to keep in mind here. Yes, he's going to have his strikeouts. He's going to struggle at times, but he's always got that in his back pocket. And, hopefully the next time it happens, it's in a little more meaningful situation and not in a blowout.
For all of the anticipated variety with Nationals lineups this season, James Wood being in that number 1 spot for each of the first 2 games, should we read into that as the idea is to consistently bat him leadoff, or should we be assuming nothing with these Nats lineups right now?
I would say I wouldn't put much stock in anything else that we've seen. I do think that's the one thing to put stock in, and Butera even said it. He wants his best hitter to take the most at-bats possible. Now, I completely understand that philosophy in the broader picture over 162 games. Of course, you want James Wood to take your most at-bats. Let's see how this plays out. The only reason I don't love having your best hitter like that, power hitter like that, hitting leadoff, is you end up oftentimes getting a solo homer instead of potential 2-run homer if he's batting second. Now, you got to have the right guy leading off, somebody getting on base enough in front of him so that he does have the opportunity to drive in more runs. At the moment, we don't really know how it's all going to shake out, so I'm okay with this for now. But if, as this goes along, if James is going well, and if somebody else is getting on base at a really good clip, I would like to see that person hit leadoff and James Wood hit second. I think game to game, that has more impact than the, 15 at-bats a year you get over a whole season by batting 1 spot higher. I think I'd rather have more shots at a bigger inning than a few more shots at solo homers. That's my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, each spot in the lineup is worth 17 plate appearances over the course of the regular season. And what is so interesting, and I've actually done this because I have no life, it works out to that amount so often. If you go through each spot in the lineup for a team over 162, it actually comes out to about 17 plate appearances between each spot over the course of a season. Doesn't matter what team you look at, doesn't matter what season you look at, like it happens a lot. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, look, we've had this discussion. A lot of teams do bat their best batters in the 1 spot. The Los Angeles Dodgers bat Shohei Ohtani in the number 1 spot. The Los Angeles Angels, during Mike Trout's peak years, would bat him in the number 1 spot. But, not batting him in the 1 spot isn't criminal. Like, if you want to say bat him second or bat him third, that's not lunacy. Like, I think there is, intellect behind that. How about the number 2 spots, though, so far? Andres Chaparro on opening day, Drew Millas in this game on Saturday. Maybe this will make for a nice adventure, at least in the early going of the regular season. Who's batting number 2 for the Nats in today's game?
Those are definitely the biggest surprises so far. And I think what this has to do, it's a little bit to do with those individuals, and maybe in that matchup that day they liked that guy against that pitcher. But I think it really speaks to how left-handed heavy this lineup is. When he's here, Abrams, Wood, Lyle, Garcia, that's a lot of lefty thunder that you have. And there's not a lot of real proven righties. Dylan Cruz now at AAA. Brady House, you hope that what we've seen is legit, but you don't really know yet. So I think what you're seeing is Blake Butera saying, I don't want to give the other manager later in the game just free reign to bring in a lefty and face 4 straight left-handed batters. So he needs somebody right-handed to bat somewhere to break them up. Now, Millas is a switch hitter, so, he started the game batting left-handed, but he could switch to go right-handed at some point. Chaparro, obviously a right-handed hitter who does well against lefties. And then you saw during the course of that game, once the Cubs went to their bullpen, he put Garcia in instead. So it may be stuff like that, but it is funny because in modern baseball, we kind of tend to think of the number 2 hitter as your best hitter on the team. I don't think anybody's trying to claim that Andres Chaparro and Drew Millas are the Nats' best hitters. I think that's more a function of who else is in the lineup as opposed to them.
Yeah, number 2. For those familiar with the great original Austin Powers movie, who does number 2 work for? Who is number 2 in the Nats lineup? That's a question we've been asking here lately. By the way, interesting to read on natsjournal.com prior to the game that it is sounding like we're going with a 50-50 split, timeshare, at catcher, KJ Ruiz and Drew Millas. This isn't necessarily what we've become accustomed to. KJ Ruiz playing the overwhelming majority of the time. It sounds like we're going to be seeing a good bit of Drew Millas here.
At least to start the season, yes. And I think that is a reflection of not wanting to run your starting catcher into the ground early on. And given everything that Ruiz has been through, that would make sense. And Butera even said, we're going to do this until somebody sort of distinguishes themselves. And he didn't make it sound like that had to be Ruiz. If Millas is clearly better, he might be willing to give him even more playing time. Now, we know Harry Ford's waiting in the wings at AAA, and at some point we will hopefully see him up here. But for now, it is probably 50-50. I will be interested to see if, as we move along, does he use either of them, more so Ruiz, as his DH on days that the other is catching to keep them in the lineup. Probably going to depend on the performance in a lot of ways. And again, the matchups and everything. We will see. But I don't think you're going to see, not unless he's just tearing the cover off the ball, I don't think you're going to see that, KJ Ruiz starting 6 out of 7 games in a week, the kind of thing that we saw often the last couple of years.
Yeah, I never got that. And I'm glad that it does not look like we will be seeing that. I think that could make for a better KJ Ruiz. I hope that it does.
If you listen to Nats Chat, you're probably a Nats fan. Well, unless you're one of the family members Tim, Al, and I pay off to boost our numbers, but the rest of you are legitimate fans of the team, hungry for all the coverage you can get. You're in luck because there's a new home for the most comprehensive coverage out there, natsjournal.com. I'm bringing more than 2 decades of journalistic expertise to Nats Journal, where you can find breaking news, analysis, and lots of interaction with fellow fans and me. You can even access every episode of Nats Chat, past and present, right there on the site. And you can get every single article I write emailed directly to your inbox the moment it publishes. Subscriptions are just $7.99 a month, or sign up for an annual subscription and pay just $5.99 a month. Go to natsjournal.com and select the plan that works for you. Then come along for the ride with me and thousands of fellow Nats fans who have already signed up. That's natsjournal.com, your new home for the best coverage in town.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
The pitch. Swinging a shot up the middle. Diving stop Nunez. Pirouettes. Fires to first. Stretched by Garcia, and he got him. Oh my, what a play by Nunez. Sprawling, tumbling to his backhand, and falling away as he popped up. Somehow made a dart of a throw to first base. That elicited some oohs and ahs here to roll over and get rid of the throw and then throw it there on the fly.
All right, so James Wood had a home run in this game on Saturday afternoon, and the Nats' other run was plated by an RBI single by Nasim Nunez, who was the Nats' starting shortstop and number 7 batter, 1 for 3 with an RBI single, a fielding error, we'll get to that, and a sensational defensive play. So the run-scoring hit, a 1-run fifth for the Nats, 1-out RBI single into center field on a 1-2 pitch to cut the Nats' deficit to 5-2. A nice piece of hitting by Nunez in that spot. But the defensive play, my goodness, what a play by Nunez. Bottom of the 7th, a spectacular defensive play for a 1-pitch ground out by Michael Busch for the 2nd out. Nunez deep in the hole, made a diving backhanded catch of an opposite field grounder by Busch, landed in shallow left field, and then, and this is the best part, while falling back down, fired a no-hop throw to first baseman Luis Garcia Jr. for the putout. And I can't emphasize this enough. He's falling back down, and he somehow gets off a throw that doesn't hop. Garcia made a nice scoop, and the Nats got the out. What a play by Nasim Nunez.
This is what this kid is capable of doing. He has the ability to do things that very few other big league ball players can do. And I don't know how often he's going to get to play shortstop. Obviously, there were different circumstances today where CJ Abrams is away from the team for the day due to a death in the family. So when that happens, of course, Nunez is your answer at short. He can be a fantastic second baseman, as we know, but that arm from deep at shortstop is as good as any in the game. He can get to just about any ball. And I don't even know how many shortstops, if they got to that one, are even thinking about trying to make the throw. Or if they do, the throw goes nowhere near where it's intended to go. And he put it right on the money, as you said. That's an all-time play there from him. We got a long way to go to see how this all plays out. But if he hits just enough, and he did have a big RBI single in this game, which was good to see, if he does that enough, and depending on what the organization does with CJ Abrams moving forward, I'm sure there's going to be at least a few people in that front office and the coaching staff thinking in themselves, should Nasim Nunez be playing shortstop ahead of anybody else on this team? Because, and it's not a knock on anybody else, including CJ Abrams. It's just Nunez is that good. He's that much better than anybody else who can play that position.
So we know his hitting is the weakness. I will say this, in his time at the major league level, he has hit some. Like, he has not been an automatic out. Now, big picture, long term, what realistically can you expect from him offensively? And there's a lack of power there that's hard to ignore. But in terms of putting balls in play, in terms of getting some hits, he's done all right in the time that we've seen him at the major league level.
He has. What we just haven't seen is a good, consistent, play him every day for several weeks in a row and see how that goes. We know as you play more, opposing teams get more of a book on you. They might start to exploit some things, and that's the real key to it all. But I will say, after 2 years that he's been in the organization, first as the Rule 5 pick who barely played, and then last year up and down to the minors, I'm ready to see him on a regular basis to find out. And if ever there's a team that should be in a position to try something like this, it's the Nationals right now in 2026. And he started both the first 2 games. I think he's going to play a lot at second base. And if Abrams isn't in the lineup for whatever reason, you can put Nunez at short, and obviously you don't lose anything. I'm ready to see what he could do if given real consistent playing time. Maybe he proves in the end that he can't hit enough at this level. But it's time to find out, I think. It's worth finding out, and I think the Nationals are in a position where they can afford to find out, even if it means in the end they learn that he can't do it.
And if CJ Abrams does have another rough defensive season, do you have him play some second base this season to keep the bat in the lineup? Do you think that that's something they would entertain?
I think only if this is a team that is in contention or trying to be in contention, then you make that move. Because they're not, I think deep down their motivation is hope that CJ plays as well as he can as a shortstop, because that boosts his trade value come July. And we know there's going to be interest in him there. If the goal is trying to win every single game and maximize your chances, it's no question that Nunez would be the better option at shortstop and Abrams at second. But that diminishes Abrams' trade value, no question about it. So I think they give Abrams every opportunity to keep playing shortstop and hope that he does so well that either he plays well enough and says, yeah, I'm a part of this, I'm your answer at shortstop in the long run, or if not, then that convinces another team out there to give up what Paul Taboni would want for him because they see him as a shortstop, not just as a second baseman.
And as we are talking CJ Abrams, new information, and it is good information. Blake Butera during his pregame session with you guys on Saturday revealing that Abrams on Thursday immediately apologized for his lack of hustle upon entering the dugout. This off his bases loaded first pitch, 2-run single to the right field corner in an at 6-run fourth. Abrams took his sweet time getting out of the batter's box due to admiring the ball. Presumably thought that he had hit a home run. He had not. Ended up getting thrown out in an attempted advance to second base. But it was really good to hear that, see that from Blake Butera, that Abrams took immediate ownership of what happened.
Yes, and I think the key to that is, number one, was immediate. Butera, and you sort of saw it on the broadcast, later on, it was either later in the inning or it was the next inning, Butera started to walk up to him in the dugout, and we didn't know what exactly was being said or who instigated what. And before Butera could actually say anything about it, CJ says to him, hey, that's my fault. I got to be better than that. I won't let that happen again. And Butera's point is, it's one thing for a manager or a coaching staff to have to be the disciplinarian in those kind of situations. He doesn't want that to have to be the case. He'd much rather have the players acknowledge it, police themselves, and in this case, recognize immediately the mistake that he made, speak up about it, and then hopefully come out there and not have that happen again. Now, we'll have to see how that all goes, but if you're Blake Butera, you'd much rather have it happen that way than the other way, which is the manager having to tell the player, don't ever do that again. He felt like that was a really important sign and development, and reiterating the kind of culture that they're trying to establish here, where it is a player's first clubhouse. The players police themselves. The manager only steps in if he feels it's absolutely necessary.
And that Abrams didn't have to be nudged into doing that, pushed into doing that. He got it. He's like, I screwed this up. Let me, squash this from the get-go. I'm very happy that he did that. So good on him. Mikolas was the Nats starting pitcher for this 10-2 loss at the Cubs on Saturday afternoon. If you know your Mikolas history, you know that his history at Wrigley Field is not the greatest. His final line for this game ended up not being the greatest. 6 runs, 4 earned in 5 innings. Though he did get done dirty in one particularly bad inning. He gave up 6 hits, which were a home run, a double, and 4 singles. He issued 3 walks, each of which was costly. He recorded 4 strikeouts through 97 pitches, 57 strikes, 40 balls. Mikolas, in the bottom of the second, allowed 4 runs, but just 2 earned. He allowed the 4 runs on 2 walks, 2 hard luck singles, an RBI sac fly, and a 2-out fielding error that was charged to shortstop Nasim Nunez, who with runners at the corners, 2 outs, and the Nats down 2-0, got charged with this fielding error off colliding with left fielder Dalen Lyle in shallow left on a fly ball by the Cubs' number 1 batter, Michael Busch. Nunez, as he drifted back, collided with Lyle as he was coming in toward the infield. The error initially was charged to Lyle and then got changed to being charged to Nunez. I don't know how you tell who deserves the error on that play, but it was an ugly-looking play. It was a bad news Bears type play in which neither guy was looking at the other, and they end up colliding, and the ball drops. So that was a hard luck inning for Mikolas, although he did issue those 2 walks. And then Mikolas, in a Cubs 1-run fourth, gave up a 2-out solo homer by the Cubs' number 9 batter, Miguel Amaya, to left center for a 5-1 Cubs lead, and Mikolas in a Cubs 1-run fifth issued a 1-out walk of Pete Crow Armstrong and gave up a 1-out RBI double by Nico Horner to deep left for a 6-2 Cubs lead. The 3 walks did not do Miles Mikolas any favors, but nor did some of the events of that 4-run inning there for the Cubs.
Yeah, let's start with the defense. I think that turned that from being a bad inning to a really bad inning, because if that play is made, he gets out of it. And there's some other plays that maybe could have been made, including a little blooper behind first base that Luis Garcia couldn't quite get to. On the ball in shallow left, they're both calling for it from what we heard afterwards from them. They couldn't hear each other calling for it. The crowd here at Wrigley can be pretty loud. The bleacher bums are going to make a lot of noise on a play like that. Yes, the wind at Wrigley wreaks havoc with everything. So it's one of those that you kind of understand how it all led up to that happening. But as Nunez told us afterwards, somebody's got to catch the ball. It doesn't matter. And how often have we seen this kind of thing from this team over the last few years? It's not to say that it doesn't happen to other teams as well, but it does feel like it happens to this team way more than it should. And yes, it's communication, but it's about somebody taking charge. It's about being in the right position all along. It's about practicing. And they say you can't really practice that. You can do this stuff in spring training, but you can't simulate the crowd noise or anything like that. Well, maybe there's something, and I know they're going to talk about this, that they can do in their own process of how to deal with pop-ups and calling other guys off that accounts for potential crowd noise, even if you don't have it in your practice session, that maybe there's something that they can do that helps communicate that better so somebody hears the other person. Whatever the case, the play has to be made. It just does. That turned what would have just been a 2-run inning into a 4-run inning, and it really killed the whole momentum of it. So that's the bad defensive part of it. Now, from Mikolas' standpoint, yes, he deserved better, but he also put himself and his team into those situations with the walks. He's not a high walk guy. He's a throw it over the plate, mix it up, try to get weak contact, and get outs that way. So for him to walk 3 in this game, and all 3 end up coming in to score, that to me is really significant. And he himself acknowledged it afterwards. And we were talking about accountability earlier with CJ Abrams. Mikolas was taking accountability for his own pitching, not pointing the finger at the play that wasn't made behind him, but saying, hey, I needed to be better myself, not putting guys on base. And when something bad does happen behind you, you can't let that spiral out of control and turn it in even worse. They're all trying to make plays. If I make a bad pitch, they're not going to point the finger at me. So if they make a bad play, I'm not going to point the finger at them. I thought it was another good example of what leadership looks like, accountability looks like. It's 2 games in, so we got a long way to go to see how this all plays out. But I think the culture that we're talking about has been on display here in these first couple of games. Maybe it's not, the plays are not happening, the results are not happening the way you'd like. But I think for the most part, guys are taking the right approach to it and holding themselves accountable when they don't do something right.
NFL teams in preparation for road games in especially hostile environments will play like loud, obnoxious music in the lead up to that game during practice in order to get the quarterback and the offensive line accustomed to having to deal with crowd noise. And spring training is so long, and I think a lot of people will tell you it's too long. You would think at some point there might be some kind of preparation for, hey, when it's really loud, what do you do? How do you communicate in the outfield? The single there that Luis Garcia Jr. could not get to, so he's running, trying to make like a Willie Mays style catch. The ball was hit into like the perfect spot. It was like in no man's land in right field.
Coming in is Lyle, who's going to catch it. Look out, they collide and the ball drops. 2 runs are going to score on the play.
James Wood was playing in like right center, and so for him to come charging in to make a diving catch, he was unable to do that. So it was a particularly well-struck ball. Should Wood have gotten to that? Should Garcia have caught that? Or is that just one of those things where you say nothing anybody could do about it?
Yeah, it's a perfectly placed ball. You had the whole defense positioned for not the ball to go to right field. Wood was shaded over. The second baseman is shaded over towards the middle of the field. So really, I think the first baseman's the only one who has a shot at it. It would have been a spectacular play by Garcia. The one thing I don't love, and I'm not just talking about this play, but we've seen him do it at second base a lot over the last few years. If there's a ball over his head, his first inclination is to turn his back on the play and try to do the over-the-shoulder Willie Mays catch. There are better techniques to keeping your body turned sideways to give yourself a better angle at it. Maybe worst comes to worst, you do have to turn all the way around, and that's your only hope. But you shouldn't be doing that right away. It's harder to get to the spot you need to get to, and it's harder to then locate the ball in the air. They try to teach guys how to run back on a ball turned sideways, and that should give you a better chance. It doesn't mean he would have made the play for sure. It's not like this was an error But it is one of those plays that, like, if you're experienced and you're good and you have good technique, you might have a better shot at that. Or if not this one, future plays on balls that go up over your head.
Yeah, and Garcia actually ended up being more or less right there to make the play, and he just ended up not making the play.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Every day, the world gets a little weirder and a lot more awesome. Cool Stuff Daily takes a look at everything from mining in space to the latest in the fight against cancer to how AI is, well, basically changing everything. It's all the cool stuff you didn't know you needed to know. Join us for Cool Stuff Daily as we take a quick look at science, tech, and the wait, what stories that make you sound way smarter at dinner. Subscribe to Cool Stuff Daily now, because the future's happening fast, and it's way too fun to miss.
Now the pitch. Swing and a ground ball hit to the shortstop, Swanson. He flips to Horner at second. Throw to first. The third double play of the game for the Cubs ends an inning, and this one ends the ball game. Cubs broke this one open after the Nationals had the lopsided win on Thursday. They will fly their W here today with their first win of the season.
So the Nats bullpen, really good in the opening day win at the Cubs. Not as good in this 10-2 loss at the Cubs on Saturday afternoon. 3 Nats relievers combined to allow 4 runs in 3 innings. Andre Granillo officially allowed 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning. He and the Cubs 4-run 6, faced 4 batters, got 2 outs. Ken Waldichuk officially allowed 2 runs in 1 1/3 innings, but he, on the first pitch that he threw, gave up a 2-out first pitch 3-run homer by Ian Happ to left field for a 9-2 Cubs lead in the bottom of the 6th. Also, Waldichuk in that Cubs 4-run 6 issued 2 walks, including a 2-out bases-loaded walk of pinch hitter Carson Kelly for a 10-2 Cubs lead. Waldichuk did then toss a perfect bottom of the 7th with 2 strikeouts. And Cole Henry looked good. He tossed a perfect bottom of the 8th in facing the Cubs numbers 3 through 5 batters in Ian Happ, Pete Crow Armstrong, and Nico Horner. But off the great bullpen work in Game 1, hard to expect that game in, game out with this bullpen. And sure enough, Granillo and especially Waldichuk had some rough outings in this game.
Yeah, not the way you want that to start. Your first pitch as a member of the Nationals, and it's a home run. I feel like this has happened before. I don't think he's the first one to do anything like that. Pretty ugly for that to be the case. And then, the inning kept going even more downhill from there. Not good. He's one of these guys. He made the team because they wanted another lefty. He's got big strikeout numbers and could provide some length because he's been a starter before in the past, but not a good way to make a good first impression. He's probably one of those guys who we could see going back and forth from Rochester to DC over the course of the season. We'll see how that all plays out, but not a good start from him. Yes, they're already trailing at that point, but you'd like to try to keep the game close, and he wasn't able to do that. Can I give you some breaking news that just happened? It's not huge news, but they have actually made a transaction. They've acquired utility player Curtis Mead from the White Sox for a catching prospect, Boston Smith, kind of a low-level prospect. They also then designated Jake Eder, AAA starter, for assignment to clear a spot on the 40-man roster. I don't know if Mead would be coming up to the big leagues or not, but that's at least some kind of roster move there that they're trying to add another player, potentially another bench player.
A lot of these kind of moves in recent days, there have been so many transactions, we haven't necessarily had the opportunity to cover all of them, but you had the trade with the New York Yankees a few days back for that minor league infielder, Zach Short. So, Paul Taboni clearly is trying to build up some depth and get this team more viable options in the minors, guys who can be called up to the majors if need be. This would seem to fall into that category.
Yeah, and I think as they've acknowledged all along, it's not just about who are your 26 in the big leagues. They want to have as many guys on a 40-man roster who could help you over the course of the season and even going beyond that. And so I think you're going to see a lot of these sort of things. And, don't get too caught up on who's on the roster on any particular given day. Curtis Mead is another infielder. He is right-handed as opposed to left-handed like Bibas and Tena are. He is Australian. He's been in the big leagues, 152 games with Tampa Bay and with the White Sox. Nothing special as far as the numbers go. He's played second base, played first base, played third base. I presume he'll go to AAA, but we haven't heard exactly what the case is going to be with him. So again, I would expect a lot of these things to come up over the course of the season. I think we're going to see an ever-evolving and changing roster.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Jorbit Bibas. The Nats last Sunday afternoon, March 22nd, announced having traded one of their pitching prospects, Sean-Paul Lignon, to the Yankees for Bibas. So a lot of this stuff going on. And also this, too, not that this is like seismic news when it happened, but the Nats returned their Rule 5 draft pick to the Philadelphia Phillies. Pitcher Griff McGarry. The Nats took him in the first round of the 2025 MLB Rule 5 draft this past December. The Nats made a bunch of picks in the Rule 5 draft this past December, but the Nats ended up returning him to the Phillies. We had grown accustomed to the Nats taking players in these Rule 5 drafts, keeping these guys. In this case here, they take a guy, but they're not ashamed/afraid to return the guy to his team.
Right. And I think they saw this spring that he had good stuff, but he just didn't have enough command of it for them to feel comfortable putting him in the big leagues. And so when that happens, don't bother. It's like, yeah, you can try to start the season with him, have him pitch in some low leverage spots, but now you're using up a spot in your bullpen. And if you feel like you need all 8 guys that you can rely on, and as we've noted how important it seems to them to have guys with options, especially in the bullpen, you have a Rule 5 pick, he's clogging up a roster spot, and you can't get rid of him without getting rid of him completely. You can't send him down. So in their mind, just not worth the risk. The Phillies took him back, and that's that. No harm done.
You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website you could check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Nats Chat, again, is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. And we will talk to you upon the conclusion of Game 3 of this series at the Cubs. Jake Irvin will be the Nats starting pitcher for a Sunday afternoon game at 2:20. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Here's the pitch. Swing a line drive, hammered to left. Deep goes Happ on the warning track. This one over his head, and it is gone. It just clears the basket and into the first row of the bleachers. James Wood, with his first home run here in 2026, gets the Nationals on the board. It's 4-1 Chicago. That one a line drive that just didn't sink. And it just cleared the basket in left field, and that's good for James Wood, who had 5 strikeouts in his first 6 at-bats. That was a James Wood bullet line drive homer to left.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.